Bill Gaither has finally spoken out about his longtime friend and collaborator Lynda Randle, and the revelations are not what fans expected. Known for his reserved and thoughtful approach, Gaither's honest reflections on Randle's impact on his music and the Gaither Vocal Band will surprise many. In this shocking interview, Gaither opens up about their shared experiences, the challenges, and a deep bond that goes beyond music, leaving fans with a new perspective on the beloved duo. Don't miss out on his unexpected words. Lynda Randle's courtroom incident was nothing short of shocking. It started like any other day in a courtroom filled with the usual tension and anticipation. But this time, the atmosphere was thick with something far more serious. Lynda, known for her inspiring gospel music and unwavering faith, was about to face the consequences of some devastating accusations. As she stood before the judge, her face was a mix of dread and hope, uncertain of the sentence that awaited her. She had never imagined her life would come to this, especially after building a career on messages of hope and positivity. Then the unexpected happened. The judge prepared to deliver the verdict, and suddenly, the room seemed to hold its breath. Lynda's expression changed, her eyes wide with shock, as if the gravity of the situation had finally hit her all at once. But it wasn't just her face that changed. Her body seemed to give way under the weight of the moment. And in a split second, Lynda collapsed right there in front of everyone. Her legs buckled, and she fell to the ground in a heap. The courtroom, usually a place of calm deliberation, was suddenly filled with chaos and concern. People rushed to her side, trying to help, but the gravity of the situation was clear. Lynda had just collapsed in the middle of a legal battle that was about to change her life forever. It wasn't just the physical collapse that stunned everyone. It was the emotional toll of the moment. What had caused Lynda to react this way? Was it the sheer weight of the charges against her? The potential loss of everything she had worked for? Or was there something deeper at play? Perhaps the realization that her carefully constructed public persona was crumbling before her eyes. The room fell silent as those around her tried to assist, but Lynda remained on the floor, struggling to regain her composure. For those who had been following her career, the sight was almost unthinkable. Lynda, who had always been so strong and composed, was now brought to her knees in front of a judge, her future hanging in the balance. This moment, her collapse in the courtroom, became a turning point in her story. It was no longer just about the legal case. It was about the emotional devastation that accompanied the accusations. Fans, friends, and even critics were left to wonder what was truly happening behind the scenes. Was she guilty, or was she simply a victim of circumstances? The drama unfolding in that courtroom was just the beginning of what would become a much larger story, one that would leave Lynda Randle's future uncertain and her public image forever changed. Lynda Randle's fall from grace wasn't something anyone could have predicted, especially considering the image she had built over the years. Known for her powerful gospel voice, inspirational messages, and unwavering faith, Lynda had become a beacon of hope for many. For years, she had been seen as a role model, someone who uplifted others through her music and ministry. But when rumors began to swirl about her involvement in a financial scandal, everything changed. What was once whispered about quietly behind closed doors soon became public knowledge, and the trust she had worked so hard to build started to crumble. First, whispers about Lynda's potential involvement in a financial scandal began circulating when discrepancies were allegedly found in the records of the charity she ran. The charity had always been her pride and joy, a way for her to give back to the community and help those who were less fortunate. It had been a significant part of her life's work, and she had always presented herself as someone deeply committed to charity and helping others. So when news broke about some questionable financial practices, it shocked many of her supporters. Some insiders claimed that during a routine audit, irregularities were found, suggesting that funds meant for the underprivileged were being misused. At first, these rumors seemed like nothing more than hearsay, just another story that would eventually die down. But they didn't. The rumors grew louder with each passing day. People began to speculate about the seriousness of the allegations. Was Lynda truly involved in something as severe as money laundering or embezzlement? The idea that Lynda, the woman known for her inspirational songs and messages of faith, could be involved in something so dishonest seemed impossible to believe for many of her fans. Her supporters were left wondering how it could be true. How could the woman they had trusted and admired for so long be caught up in such serious accusations? As the rumors gained momentum, more details started to emerge. Some reports suggested that Lynda had been charged with embezzling money from donations meant for her ministry. These allegations painted a damning picture of someone who had betrayed the very people who had supported her for years. Other whispers suggested that there were even attempts to cover up the whole situation. Some sources claim that a group of insiders had been trying to protect Lynda from facing the full extent of the law, which only added fuel to the fire. Was there a conspiracy to keep the truth hidden, or was it all just a misunderstanding? Fans who had always seen Lynda as a woman of integrity found it hard to reconcile the woman they knew with the accusations now being leveled against her. The longer the scandal dragged on, the more the public began to question the person behind the public persona. Lynda had built her career on a foundation of trust and faith, and now that very foundation was being called into question. Fans who had once looked to her as a source of strength and inspiration were now struggling to understand how she could be involved in such serious legal trouble. They were left grappling with the reality that the woman they had admired for so long might not be who they thought she was. Could someone who had spent so many years sharing messages of hope and integrity really be involved in financial mismanagement? What made the situation even more difficult for Lynda was the lack of communication from her camp. Throughout the entire ordeal, she remained silent. Her legal team didn't release any public statements addressing the growing rumors, and as a result, people were left in the dark. The silence from Lynda's side only fueled speculation. With each passing day, more rumors spread, and it became harder to separate fact from fiction. Was Lynda guilty, or was she simply a victim of a smear campaign? The more the rumors spread, the more difficult it became for anyone to know what the truth was. Her silence only intensified the pressure. Her fans were desperate for some kind of clarification. Was she guilty of these charges? Or was there a deeper story? Why wasn't she speaking out and defending herself? The longer Lynda stayed silent, the more the rumors began to dominate the conversation. Some began to wonder if the truth was so complicated that she couldn't speak about it publicly. Was there something darker at play? Something Lynda wasn't ready to confront? Or was it simply a case of her being unable to fight back against accusations that she knew were too difficult to address? Amid the rumors, fans were torn. Many still believed in Lynda, trusting that the accusations would eventually be proven false, that there was a misunderstanding, or that she had been caught up in a situation beyond her control. But there were others who felt betrayed, unable to reconcile the woman they had admired with the person now at the center of a scandal. As the whispers grew louder, so did the public outcry. People began questioning her past work, wondering if all the good deeds she had done over the years were somehow tainted by these new allegations. Had Lynda been living a double life? Was she truly the woman she had presented to the world? Or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? The media, of course, played a significant role in escalating the scandal. With every new report, the story became more sensationalized. The whispers that had once been nothing more than gossip were now headline news. Lynda, who had spent years in the public eye, was now at the mercy of the media. Some outlets defended her, saying the charges seemed too harsh and that she deserved the benefit of the doubt. Others, however, were quick to paint her as guilty, feeding into the narrative that Lynda had used her position to deceive the public and enrich herself. The media took full advantage of the drama, with sensational headlines about Lynda's downfall flooding the news. Gospel singer caught in financial scandal, read one. Lynda Randle's empire crumbles, shouted another. For Lynda, the situation was a nightmare. She had spent so much of her life building a career based on trust, faith, and integrity. And now, that very reputation was being torn apart. She was left to wonder how she ended up here, caught in a scandal that seemed impossible to escape. The more the rumors spread, the more difficult it became for Lynda to clear her name. The damage to her reputation was already done, and no matter what she said or did, it seemed like the truth had already been obscured by the media's sensationalism and the weight of the accusations. Her silence, combined with the lack of clarity surrounding the charges, left her fans in a state of confusion. People wanted answers, and they wanted to believe in the woman they had followed for so many years. But the longer Lynda remained silent, the more the doubts and rumors took root. Her career, once built on a foundation of trust and faith, was now at risk of being completely undone. It was a devastating turn of events for someone who had worked so hard to inspire others and build a legacy of hope. As Lynda sat in the eye of the storm, the future seemed uncertain. Would the truth eventually come to light? And would she be able to restore her reputation? Or would this scandal define her legacy, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions, whether they were intentional or not? The scandal and legal troubles surrounding Lynda Randle had cast a shadow over her once glowing career, and only time would tell whether she would be able to recover from the damage that had been done. The courtroom drama involving Lynda Randle had everyone on edge. What was supposed to be just another legal proceeding quickly turned into a moment no one could have predicted. The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick with tension as the judge prepared to deliver the final verdict. Lynda, who had been a figure of inspiration and grace for so many years, stood there, her face a mix of hope and dread. She had always prided herself on her faith, on the integrity she had built her career around. And now, it seemed like everything was about to unravel in front of her. The whispers, the rumors, the accusations, everything had led up to this one moment. The room felt heavier with every passing second, and Lynda's heart pounded in her chest. For years, Lynda had been known for her unwavering strength, the way she carried herself through life's challenges with grace and dignity. But today, standing in front of a judge, everything felt different. She had spent her life lifting others up through her music, through her messages of faith and hope. Now, it was her turn to face something she could never have prepared for. The questions about her actions, the doubts about her character, and the accusations of financial misconduct had all been swirling around her for months. But standing in that courtroom, Lynda had no idea just how much it was all about to come crashing down on her. The judge's voice broke through the heavy silence, his words calm but stern. The court had already heard the evidence, and the tension in the room was palpable. Lynda could feel the eyes of everyone in the courtroom on her, the weight of their gazes pressing down on her. The prosecutor had painted a damning picture of her actions, detailing the financial mismanagement that had allegedly occurred, documents that appeared to have been tampered with, discrepancies in the financial records, and even testimonies from witnesses who claimed to have seen her involved in the misuse of charity funds. The evidence seemed overwhelming, and Lynda could feel the reality of the situation settling in. As the judge began to speak, Lynda's mind raced. She had never imagined that it would come to this, that her life would be reduced to a courtroom drama where her every move was being scrutinized. She had always believed in the power of redemption, in the idea that the truth would come out eventually. But now, standing here, everything felt out of her control. The person she had worked so hard to become, the woman of faith, integrity, and kindness, was now being painted as something entirely different. And the worst part was, she couldn't shake the feeling that it was all her fault. The judge's words were slow and deliberate as he read the charges against her. "Lynda Randle," he began, his voice echoing in the tense room. "The evidence before this court is clear, and the charges are severe. You stand accused of embezzling charitable funds, misappropriating donations meant for the underprivileged, and deceiving the public for personal gain." Lynda's breath caught in her throat. The words hit her like a punch in the stomach, each one driving deeper into her chest. She had never imagined that she would hear these words directed at her. The life she had built, the legacy she had worked so hard to create, was now being torn apart piece by piece. For a moment, everything seemed to blur. The room, the people, the judge, they all faded away as the reality of the charges sank in. Lynda tried to keep her composure, but it was impossible. The weight of the moment was too much to bear. She had spent so many years working to build something good, to inspire people with her music and messages of hope. And now, it felt like everything she had worked for was slipping through her fingers. The thought of being labeled a criminal, of facing the consequences of these accusations, was almost too much for her to process. The judge paused, giving Lynda a moment to gather herself. Her legs felt weak beneath her, her knees trembling as the gravity of the situation threatened to overwhelm her. She clutched the edge of the podium, trying to steady herself, but the sense of dread was unbearable. "Are you guilty of these charges?" the judge asked, his voice calm but unyielding. Lynda opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her mind raced as she tried to find the right thing to say, the right defense for herself, but nothing felt right. The weight of the situation had her paralyzed, and all she could do was stand there, struggling to find the words that would somehow clear her name. The silence stretched on, filling the courtroom with an eerie tension. Lynda could feel the stares of her family behind her, their eyes filled with concern, worry, and disbelief. Her husband, who had always stood by her side through thick and thin, looked pale and anxious, his face etched with worry. The weight of the moment was heavy on everyone in the room. Lynda could hear the murmurs of the crowd, the whispers of speculation, but none of it mattered. All that mattered was the verdict. The judge's decision would determine the rest of her life. And then it happened. Just as Lynda was starting to gather her thoughts, to speak, she felt a sudden wave of dizziness wash over her. The room seemed to spin around her, and before she could catch herself, her knees gave way. She collapsed in the middle of the courtroom, her body crumbling to the floor. The gasps from the crowd were immediate. People rushed to her side, but Lynda felt as if she were floating, detached from everything that was happening around her. The fear, the confusion, the overwhelming sense of dread, it all came crashing down on her in that moment. She had always been the one to hold it all together, to remain strong in the face of adversity. But now, in front of everyone, she had failed. Her family rushed to her, trying to help her back to her feet, but the emotional and physical weight was too much. Lynda's mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. But all she could think about was how everything she had built, the trust, the reputation, the love from her fans, was now shattered. As she was helped to a nearby bench, the trial came to a temporary halt. The judge called for a break, but Lynda wasn't sure if it was the physical collapse or the emotional weight of the situation that had caused it. She felt lost, confused, and utterly broken. The courtroom buzzed with hushed conversations, the weight of Lynda's collapse lingering in the air. People were talking, speculating, questioning everything they thought they knew about the woman who had once been a symbol of faith and hope. Fans who had followed her for years were left in shock, struggling to reconcile the woman they had admired with the person now at the center of a scandal. They couldn't believe that the woman who had always preached love and integrity was now facing the very charges that went against everything she had stood for. But for Lynda, the hardest part wasn't the public's reaction. It was the realization that her life, her career, and her legacy were all on the line. The weight of the verdict was heavy, but it was nothing compared to the emotional toll of seeing everything she had worked for come crashing down. As the trial resumed, Lynda struggled to find the strength to face the next part of the proceedings. The pressure, the guilt, the fear, it was all too much. She didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was clear, her life would never be the same again. The public and family's reaction to Lynda Randle's legal troubles was a whirlwind of shock, confusion, and, in some cases, deep disbelief. Fans who had known Lynda for years as a beacon of hope, positivity, and faith were suddenly faced with an entirely different side of the woman they had admired. The news of her conviction for embezzling charity funds sent shockwaves through the gospel music community and beyond. People who had followed Lynda's career and looked up to her were left grappling with the harsh reality that someone they had trusted and believed in could be involved in something so serious and damaging. For years, Lynda had been the embodiment of grace and integrity. Her music had touched thousands of lives, and her ministry had been a source of inspiration for countless people. She had built a reputation for being a woman of unwavering faith, someone who dedicated her life to helping others. So when the news broke about her legal troubles, it was hard for many of her fans to comprehend. How could the woman who had spent her career spreading messages of love and redemption now be facing accusations of financial misconduct? The cognitive dissonance was palpable. Fans who had once turned to Lynda's music for solace now found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew about her. The media played a huge role in shaping the public's perception of Lynda's situation. Headlines exploded across news outlets, some of which sensationalized the scandal, while others struggled to find the truth amidst the rumors. Gospel singers fall from grace, read one headline. Lynda Randle convicted of embezzling charity funds, screamed another. The more the media dug into the details of her case, the more complicated it seemed. Some outlets reported that Lynda had been involved in financial mismanagement and had been misusing funds intended for the needy, while others suggested she might have been a victim of a smear campaign. But despite the varying narratives, one thing was clear: Lynda's reputation had taken a major hit. And it wasn't just the media that was questioning her actions. Her fans were too. The online world erupted with a mixture of disbelief and anger. Some fans took to social media to express their shock, with many struggling to reconcile the Lynda they had admired with the woman now facing serious legal charges. How could she do this? One fan posted. She's always been about helping others. How could she betray the very people who supported her? These posts reflected the confusion many fans felt. For years, Lynda had been a source of light and hope. And now, it seemed as though that image had been shattered. But not all reactions were negative. Many fans were quick to defend Lynda, insisting that there had to be some kind of misunderstanding. "I refuse to believe this about her," another fan wrote. "She's always been a woman of integrity, and I don't think she's capable of this." These fans clung to the belief that Lynda was being unjustly accused or that the whole situation had been blown out of proportion. They argued that the charges against her were based on misunderstandings or miscommunications, and they continued to stand by her despite the overwhelming evidence against her.